All right, well, thank you so much, and thanks all for the invitation to virtually be with you today. So I wanted to start this talk by giving a bit of a sort of timeline or overview of how long I've been working on some of the data that I'm going to be talking about later today. And I realized as I was putting this together that or the vast majority of my crowdsourcing data ownership or work neatly overlaps with my involvement with Jode on the editorial board. And so I did an early modern English literature PhD. I'm studying convents, early modern women's convents in the Low Countries between 2010 and 2014. I was using acres and acres of handwritten manuscript data, and that was really what led me to want to see if crowdsourcing was a viable methodology for increasing sort of participation in the transcription process. So I, through a series of lovely accidents, got involved with the folks at the Zooniverse, which is based in the Department of Astrophysics at University of Oxford, and spent a few years there, first as a DH postdoc and then Humanities PI, building specific projects for specific research purposes and specific data creation purposes with different repositories, including the Folger Shakespeare Library, Tate Britain, and others. But I also, for the Folger project called Shakespeare's World, had my own research questions. I was sort of coming into this with a lot of interests in the methodologies of the crowdsourcing platform, but also potentially answering some of my own interests about women's writing and Catholicism in the period. Jode launched in around 2015, and I was invited to join the editorial board at the same time that Shakespeare's World launches. I continued working on Shakespeare's World, doing sort of community management and engaging with volunteers on the Zooniverse platform, while also doing a British Academy postdoc. So it was a lot to be doing all at the same time, but it was a sort of richly, mutually informative work. And then in 2018, I took a position at the Library of Congress to work on the By the People crowdsourcing platform, which is one of the dataset outcomes I'll be talking about today. And after that point, moved to University of Maryland in 2020, where I now teach crowdsourcing methods, build new projects with students, and try to use data and understand my data in ways that I have not really been able to do for many of the reasons that I think people have touched upon earlier today. And I'm now doing new work to try to understand the barriers that different GLAMs, cultural heritage organizations, face when they try to take crowdsourced data into their discovery platforms, into their content management systems. So I'm going to be talking about these two very different case studies. I hope you can see there's a QR code in the top of the slide for the first article, which I published with former colleagues and a doctoral student, Mason Jones, about the By the People crowdsourcing data sets. And I'll spend a bit less time talking about that today, partly because it's out there. You can read it for yourself. And then I'll talk about the much messier journey of getting to the Shakespeare's World data sets and sort of wrapping my head around that. And I want to thank the Folger for a fellowship that I was able to spend a month last summer kind of deep diving into this data really for the first time in a long time. So By the People, this is an image of the crowdsourcing transcription platform itself. We see an image from a 1863 diary page from Clara Barton and the volunteer-generated transcription alongside it. When the transcription's complete, they are brought back, usually as a group within the campaign or the project level from By the People, which is usually kind of organized along archival descriptive norms of, folders or other chunks of that nature. But we bring the transcriptions back. They appear in a one-to-one relationship alongside the original images in the Library of Congress's key discovery platform. And they also occur along as software e-resources or data sets. And so when we wrote our JODE paper, we were able to describe the process by which the data were created by the volunteers, and also the thinking that is not really visible otherwise of how we brought the transcriptions back, why we decided to have this one-to-one relationship between the transcription page and the transcription, and these bulk data sets that we hope would allow people to do sort of a larger scale inquiry against a whole collection. To date, I think I've seen a little bit of evidence of that reuse. The Library of Congress sort of regularly promotes and tries to make people aware of that. I think where we've seen use of the data the most are amongst K-12 educators, and in some smaller reuse situations, including one I'm doing with my student Mace, to take sort of subsets or pieces of the larger data set. So in one case, the papers of Rosa Parks, to try to understand through the archival data and the transcriptions, in this case, the sort of shape of her activism during the Montgomery bus boycott years. And I really hope that there will be more data reuse along those lines in the years to come. And again, this is a screenshot of the JODE platform and the paper in situ. So now we get to Shakespeare's World. And again, this is a Zooniverse project that launched in 2015. It ran until 2019 when, for reasons of sort of running out of bandwidth, funding, time, all of those things that we all are a bit short on, Heather Wolf, my co-investigator, and I, and our many and sundry high contributing volunteers and other stakeholders on the Zooniverse side and the Oxford English Dictionary side, who were also key partners in this effort. We all said that this is a good moment to sort of draw a line under the project, take the data that we have and try to understand it, and maybe we'll relaunch with new data in future. But our goals from the outset were to engage a broad volunteer base to transcribe digitized Folger manuscripts, predominantly from the 16th and 17th centuries, and make those amenable to full text search. And there's a lovely term that the Folger folks use, Heather Wolf and Julie Sorzik, particularly, that full text finding aids, which I really love, to describe these fully searchable archives. We also were hoping that through the process of transcription, volunteers would, we gave folks sort of licenses or access to the OED for those who didn't have it through another institutional means, and encouraged people to go looking for older usages of terms and words. And so some fun, prominent examples that came out of this were antedatings for the word white lie, or the phrase white lie, and the use of the word partner to mean sort of, my spouse, my loved one. And we also did some automated checking in real time to see if volunteers were transcribing previously unrecorded words or variants that weren't represented in the OED. So that gave a bit of real time. We might have discovered something just now, which is cool. And we were also fundamentally trying out new approaches to text transcription on the Zooniverse platform. I'm going to show you a GIF now of the transcription interface for Shakespeare's World, where a volunteer would start by placing dots around a segment of text, no longer than a line across the span of a page, that they felt confident to transcribe. And we really tried to message, only do what you feel comfortable doing. And then we tried to build in tools such as a clickable keyboard and a crib sheet where people could take a little snapshot and sort of save that in their, physical bank of bits of text to kind of prompt, like, okay, yeah, I saw this letter, this word form in a previous page, and this is what it was there, and kind of use that as a prompt. So this is the snippet or crib sheet function here. And we also added something new to the Zooniverse platform, and I think this is probably completely innovative in terms of its application to crowdsourced interfaces. I don't know that I've seen it since. But because all the volunteers on the platform were transcribing independently, they couldn't see what others had done, which is in keeping with this universe sort of process at that time. We wanted to try to drive the transcription to parts of pages that hadn't been done yet. So once enough people had seen a line or a piece of a line within the text, we would put gray dots around it, so mimicking those blue dots, to say, okay, enough of that part of the page, please focus on other areas. And this was in response to seeing data outcomes from other projects where there would be what's called overclassification, or sort of like over focus on typically the tops of the pages. We're really trying to target volunteer labor, and we were very aware of sort of the ethics of keeping asking, or without realizing or meaning to, asking people to just, transcribe anything they want, and they might focus on kind of the natural starting place on a page, and we might then really lose out on other parts of the page. So we were trying to be smart in the aggregation and use kind of real-time information. So here are some early results. And for any of you who've done alpha testing, you know that perhaps one of the limitations can be that you are testing with people who have a higher sort of familiarity with the tool or the system, or maybe the subject area, because they may be the folks that you have to hand. So that was sort of a rookie mistake that we made. So this is an early aggregation from the alpha period before we launched to the public, and it's a cream cheese recipe from the 17th century, and it's pretty spot on. I think it's like well over 95% accurate. And the page is on a bit of a slant, so it has a bit of complexity. It's in an italic hand, which it actually can be a bit harder to read than a secretary hand. So we thought, okay, this is working. How exciting. And then we opened it up to thousands of people, and the results were a little different, which is not through the fault of the volunteers and their transcriptions, but actually through the fault of our clustering algorithm. So that bit where we're trying to find the overlaps, the two dots, and everybody's placing their own dots and they can't see other people's dots that came before them. We realized that was actually a very common point of failure, and the transcription was ultimately not reaching what's called a consensus in the Zooniverse model, or like high rates of agreement. And I'll show you why that, or kind of what the outcome or result of that was in just a moment. But I just wanted to briefly say, we had thousands of users who were making, hundreds of thousands, or nearly, just a bit over 200,000 contributions or classifications, and this is showing them in the proportion or size of their effort relative to all of the classifications. And I'm really grateful to my current master's student, David Wang, for working with me on the data cleaning that we're doing now and on these visualizations. These are all him. So I always knew consensus was a bit awkward, and I knew that we had tried to change it at points. We tried to intervene with it. We tried to make it better. We changed systems. I don't have time to talk about all of that today, but that's going into our JODE paper, our various things that we tried to do to improve the performance of the system. And then I was looking at this graph that David made, and I said, oh, so to, I think, Aoife's point that it's really hard to do this work, 10 years later, it truly is. So I saw this spike and I was like, what is that? What is that? I can't remember. And then I realized it was the moment where I thought, something's not working here, so we're going to force retire a bunch of stuff and stop showing it to volunteers. And so the consensus reason, or the reason for the retirement, is kind of all over the place, and there's this huge spike. And it's not that on this day a bunch of people suddenly did high quality enough transcriptions that we could retire them. So that's very starkly showing me a decision that I made that I hadn't realized was so stark until seeing it in a graph. So we've spent hundreds of hours of this data cleaning adventure trying to understand things like that. understand decisions that were made. And I'll just trot through quickly to say this is sort of us working through the data in different forms, trying to make it a little bit more intelligible, breaking it into columns, trying to explain in our README and in our article kind of what these terms of art are from the Zooniverse side and so on. And so in conclusion, data papers can help you make sense of your project outcomes, the good, the bad, and the very medium. So thank you.